Wealth Manager, where we help make your money work for you. On the show today, it's been a volatile start to 2016. We'll tell you what market gurus Ridham Desai of Morgan Stanley and Prashant Jain of HDFC AMC expect this year. Investments in financial assets finally seem to be overtaking gold and real estate. We talk to Abhijit Bhave of Karvy Private Wealth. And Hyderabad sees a whopping 67% jump in residential sales. We'll get you details of a JLL India report. A volatile start to 2016 has not dented the optimism of market gurus. While Prashant Jain of HDFC Mutual Fund believes that the fall in the Indian markets is a great entry point for investors, Morgan Stanley's Ridham Desai is of the view that although investors may not see stellar returns in 2016, India is all set to outperform its peers going ahead. Take a look. The new year has started off on a volatile note triggered by the fall in the Chinese markets. Clearly, India is not insulated from global triggers.
What happens outside India, whether it is US or China, these are large markets. So whenever they have sharp volatility, it does impact Indian markets, but this impact is limited for very, very short periods of time. I think it's more important to focus on how is the local economy doing, what are the valuations.
India is not a frontier market. It's a large market. It's the 8th largest stock market in the world. The 8th largest stock market in the world cannot be disconnected with the markets around it. So if markets around it are falling off, then India will participate.
While most emerging markets are in deep pain, India is the biggest beneficiary of the commodity rout. And Jain believes that over the next few years, India is poised to outperform its peers. Morgan Stanley's Ridham Desai's views are also similar.
Globally, when we put down the outlook for this year, which was in early December, we essentially opined that it's a low return world and that equities, like a lot of other asset classes, will struggle to generate absolute returns. Indeed, 2015 also was a tough year for asset classes globally, not just equities, but gold, oil, whether it's emerging, developed, bonds, everything struggled. So it's a low return world, and I think we're still in that low return world. And from an India perspective, because India has lost its beta versus its peer group, a low return world basically means India outperforms. So I cannot say that we were expecting markets to fall off so dramatically in the first week. In the context of our low return outlook, it's not out of hand, but it's obviously been a very dramatic start, and along expected lines, India is outperforming. You can't draw much solace from it if you are based in India, because you still lose absolute value. But this is the template, I think, for most of 2016, unless something turns and there is a snapback.
So what are the themes that these market veterans are betting on for 2016?
Businesses where the profitability is stressed, businesses which benefit from lower interest rates, businesses which are related to capital spending in the economy. To my mind, I would prefer those rather than simply buying consumption stories or at very high multiples, or buying simply export-led stories. In the entire financial space in India offers good growth opportunities. And I mentioned to you that the retail-focused banks are great business models. They are valued appropriately. So they should do well over time because the underlying growth is quite well.
I think you want to start nibbling at rural plays. They've been very poor performers over the past 18 months, and I think they'll start turning around. I think they've certainly bottomed. When they pick up momentum is yet to be seen, but I would argue probably in the next 3 to 6 months. I'd continue to back urban consumption. So rural and urban consumption would be one major theme. Government capex, I think, will remain strong, so infrastructure plays should do well. That could be a second theme. I think we still think the dollar continues to retain a bit of strength, and inside that we are more inclined to play software over pharmaceuticals. I think there's still adjustment in pharma, so that could be another theme. I think at some point in time this year, probably April or May, GST gets passed. So in the second half, I think GST plays will come into the limelight. So those are, that's another angle that you want to pursue. So when I combine all this at the sector level, we end up being overweight consumer discretionary, we're overweight technology, we're overweight industrials, slightly, not a lot. We're overweight private banks, underweight SOE banks, and we're overweight energy. Okay. We continue to stay underweight healthcare, consumer staples, and materials.
How does India stack up compared to its peers? And is this an opportunity to enter the market?
The world has a problem in terms of high leverage, in terms of demographics, and therefore low growth. And indeed, a lot of parts of the world is facing disinflation, bordering almost on deflation, though we have not reached that, but it's disinflation nevertheless, and it's therefore a challenging environment long term. India does not have these problems. India does not have a major debt problem, except for maybe some select companies and therefore some corporate leverage in the system, but household sector is pretty underlevered. The government has actually given up debt over the past few years. India has a very attractive demographic picture, so on a relative basis, long term, India stands out. If you look at foreign portfolios, they are overweight India, and those overweight positions have actually grown, they've not shrunk. Investors recognize India's long-term position, also our short-term policy traction, and has rewarded India accordingly.
The economy is, in my opinion, doing quite okay. The progress has been a little slow than what was anticipated. But I think 6 months from today, 1 year from today, the recovery will be more visible. And I think valuations in India are quite attractive. Let us not forget that over the last 7 years, the Indian stock markets have not done anything. They are up hardly 20 odd %. So I am quite optimistic, and I would look at this fall driven by China as a great entry point.
Ridham Desai believes that while we can't rule out the base case scenario, investors can expect 12 to 14% from equities going forward.
A lot of the emerging market targets that we have are approaching our 2016 bear case scenario. India is still far away from there. You know, my bear case scenario for the Sensex is circa 22,000, so we still have another 10% to go. And it essentially tells us that the worst is still not upon us. I mean, it could get worse from here if it does get. It's hard for me to tell whether it does or not. I do expect policy response in China to what's going on, and if that happens, and if there is, if that comes through, then there will be some stability in the near term. If the next 10 years turn out to be a low return world because growth is sluggish globally, then it will be hard for India to generate those type of returns. So we have to see it in the context of other asset classes and other equity markets. For now, I think 12 to 14% still looks okay, but that view can be challenged, and I would not stand up very hard against a challenge like that.
The good news is that the new generation of retail Indian investors seem to have matured.
You look at the flows that are coming into India, Indian equity funds, large portions of it are systematic investing plans.
Okay.
Monthly commitments that people are making. You don't make monthly commitments when you are trading. This is a change in the characteristic of investing in India. It's a very happy change. It's something that we've been talking about for years. We've been trying to push investors to make these systematic calls rather than try to time the markets, and they finally heard us. And that's because we have a new generation of equity investors there. You know, a much younger population that is less, less hurt by the previous boom bust cycles and the scams of the 90s. Doesn't have any memory of that, and is willing to make long-term calls. So I would actually argue that the retail money there is pretty long-term, and which is why it has actually lived through this volatility of the past 6 months without really budging.
Alright, time for a short break, but on the other side, we'll tell you which asset classes are most preferred by Indian investors. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Wealth Manager. Although 2015 was not a great year for investors, retail flows into financial assets continue to gain momentum. In fact, the Karvy Wealth report says that investments in financial assets have overtaken gold and real estate. I'm joined by Abhijit Bhave of Karvy Private Wealth. Thanks very much, Abhijit, for joining me on the show. I want to start by asking you that one of the first things that come across in the report is that financial assets are overtaking physical assets now in India.
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me. You know, we Indians have always loved gold, and traditionally a lot of Indians have put money in real estate. But what we have seen in this report last year is that for the first time in the last 6 years, financial assets have got the first tick. 55% of money has gone in financial assets. It was 35% earlier. So obviously people have preferred this. In fact, gold has gone down, silver has gone down, platinum has gone down, and very clearly there's a preference after many years for financial assets.
Do you think that's because the obsession with gold and real estate is finally waning, or is it because as asset classes they haven't really performed at all, so there's no choice but financial assets?
Actually, it's a mix of both. If you look at real estate, the markets have not really taken off, and a good way to put it is that the golden era of gold is over. The golden era of real estate will come back later. Now is the golden era of equity and other financial assets. So it's a mix of both. Financial assets doing better and real estate, gold not doing as well. Plus investors getting savvier in terms of their preference of asset class.
And within the financial assets, where have you seen the maximum growth?
Yeah, so equity is the king. So after a long time, equity has overtaken fixed deposits with a growth of 29%. So that's a large growth, and the other smaller sub-asset classes are mutual funds and alternative investments.
What about alternative investments, Abhijit? That's one area that seems to have picked up, although a comparatively much smaller proportion. But what kind of a growth are you expecting in that segment?
So as you rightly said, only the base is much smaller, and just to explain how what we have calculated, we have included in this structured products, private equity funds, real estate funds, and also high yield debt. Now the growth rates are massive. They are around 44%. So in our business at Karvy, we deal with HNIs, and very clearly HNIs have preferred alternative investments over other financial investments to begin with. In fact, as the report says, even going ahead, we are seeing maximum growth percentage wise in alternative investments.
Among the alternative investments, any specific trends or areas where there has been more of an interest? Startup funds, for example, seems to be the flavor of the season.
So we have done the numbers, and it's actually nearly the same in structured products, private equity funds, as well as real estate funds. So that's back as the flavor of the season. Venture capital startup funds are also catching up, but a lot of ultra HNIs are doing direct investments and not through a fund.
India versus rest of the world, how does it stack up? How would you compare them in terms of growth in wealth?
Okay, so Avni, this is something which is quite an eye opener. If you compare India versus global investors, and we are looking at all individual investors, we are on par in terms of fixed deposits or debt, and we are also on par in terms of real estate. But the trend in India is completely reverse on equity. So we have much lesser money in equity, and we have much more money in alternative investments, because that's where we also look at physical gold, whereas debt is around 40%, and you also have real estate around 20%. So going ahead, as our report says, we are expecting a trend reversal, and we are expecting people to not buy as much gold, so alternate assets goes down, and we are expecting people to buy much more equity.
I know you said you were likely to see a trend reversal from physical to financial assets continuing, but if you can elaborate a little more on where you're likely to see wealth moving in 2016.
Okay, so 1 year the trend will normally continue. The equity markets have not done as well. Though the house view that we have is that you will be able to get a return of 15-20% in equities asset class. We will be able to see around 2 rate cuts of 25 bips each. The report mainly covers the 5-year scenario, and so just to come back to your question, possibly this year within financial assets we might still see a going up, going down of equity or fixed deposits, but the trend would be firm in terms of financial assets, and more in the 5-year horizon we have seen explosive growth in equity, and we are also seeing very high growth rates on mutual funds and alternative investments as mentioned earlier, whereas the growth in real estate is around 3 to 4%, gold 1 or 2%, and a good growth rate in diamonds.
That's quite interesting, Abhijit, but I just want to divert a little bit now. After the volatile 2015, we've already had quite a rocky start to this year. What's your advice to investors about investing in 2016?
See, the advice always remains the same across all the years. You have to diversify and look at asset allocation. You have to have some equity, some debt, some real estate, some gold. And how much depends on two things: how much depends on your risk profile, and depends on the view that is there on the market. So clearly it's equity overweight, and clearly it's gold underweight. Gold is more of a hedge, so in a portfolio gold should not be more than 5 or 10%. But typically all the investors I meet are heavy into real estate and also heavy into debt. So we are saying go more towards equity, but do not exit completely any asset class.
And which pockets or themes would you bet on this year?
For the new year, okay. Before that, I would like to definitely mention here that the next 5 to 10 years seems to be a wonderful period of making a lot of money in equity as an asset class. If you look at the short term, and by short term I actually mean 1 year, we are looking at sectors where there's a consumption theme. So with the pay commission money coming in, with people looking at spending more, with interest rates going down, you can look at stories like auto, you can look at stories like consumer durables, you can look at stories like housing finance companies.
And given that debt is also quite attractive at this point, what would your recommendation be on the fixed income side?
So if you look at a lot of our HNI clients, Avni, are putting large amounts of money in tax-free bonds, where over a long period you make good returns both on interest yields as well as capital appreciation. If you're looking at mutual funds, as I said, you have to have an allocation in debt and a mix of long and short, which is typically done through a dynamic allocation kind of fund, would make sense. But once again I'm saying don't go away from debt, and maybe look at tax smart investments by moving away from fixed deposits to debt funds with a 3-year horizon.
All right, Abhijit, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abhi.
Time now for another quick break. We'll come back and shift focus to the real estate space. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Wealth Manager. Before we go ahead, here's a quick wrap of what made news this week. You may soon be able to buy motor insurance from ATMs. Insurance regulator IRDAI plans to allow insurance companies to tie up with banks for this. The first step will be making the mandatory third-party motor insurance available through ATMs. As many as half of the vehicles are plying without insurance, and the regulator believes that easier accessibility can ensure better compliance. If you thought that the upcoming union budget is likely to provide some tax relief, then you might have to think again. Given the challenging financial environment, the government is unlikely to provide any income tax benefits to taxpayers. On the contrary, it might consider levying additional measures for revenue mobilization. In fact, tax experts believe that while the government is unlikely to tweak the income tax slabs, it could consider options such as hiking conveyance allowance or medical expenses, areas that need to be revised. Moving on to the real estate space, things seem to be looking up for the real estate market in Hyderabad. A recent report by property consultant JLL India says that residential sales in the city have increased by a whopping 67% in the last 3 quarters. That's not all. In fact, new launches as well have seen a significant pickup. Nidhi Rai is here with more on that. Nidhi?
That's right, Avni. Buyers no longer seem to be sitting on the fence, at least as far as Hyderabad is concerned. To give you a sense of the numbers, in the last 3 quarters, 7,000 units were sold compared to 4,200 units in the same period a year ago. In fact, as you said, this has also led to new launches which have increased 1.5 times in the last 1 year. Let's take a look at some specific micro markets. More than 85% of the launches in 2015 were in the city's major IT hub in the western sub-market. This market spans from Nizampet in the north to Narsingi in the south and has a good mix of affordable as well as luxury segment ranging from 3,500 rupees per square feet to exclusive luxury villas at rupees of 13,500 rupees per square feet. On the eastern side, you have the metro rail, which will become more operational in phases over the next 2 years. As a result, the east-west corridor will see development both on the commercial and the residential side. This is crucial because the commercial hubs such as Hi-Tech and Gachibowli are likely to get saturated, and the eastern sub-market, which is cheaper, will provide an alternative. Remember, the Hyderabad real estate market was hit not only due to the overall slowdown in the sector, but also as a result of the political unrest in the run-up to the formation of Telangana. However, now with the political stability returning, buyer sentiment seen a significant turnaround, and the steps government is taking to bring in investments is also expected to provide a further impetus to the market. Back to you.
All right, Nidhi, thanks a lot for bringing us all those details. But let's shift focus now to the mutual fund sector. Earlier this week, capital markets regulator SEBI tightened the rules for mutual fund investments in corporate debt. SEBI has been keen on making these norms more stringent ever since the NAVs of two of JP Morgan AMC's debt funds crashed and the AMC was forced to restrict redemptions. This was due to a downgrade in bonds issued by Amtek Auto, to which the fund house had a significant exposure. SEBI has now reduced single security exposure, sector exposure, as well as group exposure for debt schemes. Himadri is here with all the details. Himadri, take us through the new rules SEBI has put in place and also what it really means for investors.
Right, Avni, let me first take you through the new rules. SEBI has reduced mutual funds exposure to a single sector to 25% from 30% it is currently. And along with that, they have decided to cut mutual funds exposure specifically to housing finance companies to 5% of schemes NAV, that is net asset value. And the regulator has also brought down mutual funds group investments to 20% from 25% currently. Further, SEBI has also cut mutual funds exposure in a single issuer investment to 10% of the scheme's net asset value, again, which is NAV. So remember, recently JP Morgan Mutual Fund faced large redemption after Amtek Auto was downgraded by rating agencies, and the fund house had higher investments in Amtek Auto's debt instruments. So the regulator has made changes at 3 levels: issuer, group and sector levels, and this is aimed at providing a sufficient spread of risk through diversification of the investment portfolio. So these investment restrictions have been made to mitigate risk arising on account of high level of exposure in the wake of events pertaining to credit downgrades. So from an investor's perspective, fund managers are saying it will bring in more diversification, since the scheme's portfolio will not be concentrated to one sector, one issue or one group.
All right, Himadri, thanks very much for bringing us all those details. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of Wealth Manager. To watch the episodes online, log on to btvin.com/wealthmanager. If you have any queries or comments, do write into us on wealthmanager@btvin.com. Thanks for watching.